Hey team, this is Brian, and today's video is a technical SEO lesson. We're going to look at 4 examples of e-commerce pagination. Let's get into it. Our first example is from Taylor & Hart. I'm on their engagement rings page, and here you can see all the listings. Down below, they go with the traditional pagination method, which is probably my favorite because we're all used to it and it works great for Googlebot. So as I hover over each of these numbers in the lower left, you can see a paginated URL is associated with each one. So right off the bat, that's a good sign. Essentially what I'm doing in each one of these audits is I'm looking for a good human user experience, and also I'm making sure that Googlebot has what it needs to crawl and access the additional listings. So let's open the Chrome inspector, and I'm going to hover over one of the numbers, click on it, and just confirm in the source code that yes, I do see a hyperlink reference to a crawlable URL, and I see that for each of the paginated options. Just a quick aside, another reason this setup is so good is because Google can kind of crawl in both directions with access to the first 5 pages and then also the last page in the series. It's a great setup. Our next example is from Shane Co. I am also on their engagement rings page, and they opt for something a little bit more modern, and they go with the load more button. So this is great. When I click this, I'm going to get additional listings on the page, and that's a great shopping experience. And they've also been thoughtful for Googlebot. So let me kind of clean this URL up. I was clicking around before, and let's get down to that load more button again. Okay. So when I hover over the load more button now, you can see down in the lower left, we've got that paginated URL. So it looks like Googlebot does have access to the second page in the series and all the listings that are on that page, which is exactly what we want. Let's just open up the Chrome inspector. Let's click the button and confirm. I do see a hyperlink reference and a crawlable URL here to the second page in the series. That's awesome. Since I can't see page 3, 4, and 5 like I did at Taylor & Hart, I might click into page 2 and just make sure that I see the same thing, an avenue for Google to reach the third page in the series. Our third example is from Zales Outlet, and we've got another load more button. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to hover over it. I don't see anything showing up in the lower left. So initially I'm a little bit concerned that maybe Googlebot doesn't have a crawlable URL in the source code. So let me go ahead and throw on the inspector. I'm going to click on the button, and I'm going to kind of poke around the code and see if I can find that hyperlink reference and URL. I'm not seeing it, and so I think that it's possible that we don't have it. One additional check that I sometimes like to do is just click on the button and create the next paginated URL, and we could just grab this, copy it, let's delete it and go back to where we were, and then we can open up the inspector and we can search the code for that little part of the URL, which is load more equals 1. And I don't see it in the source code. So I think it's possible that Google does not have a crawlable URL to reach that second page in the series and see those product listings and associate them with the entire paginated series. So it's a little bit concerning from an SEO perspective. I would like to see maybe something more like the Shane Co setup here. And one little side quest that I do want to go on, because I think this kind of audit can be useful, and this might help people understand these load more buttons a little bit better. So let me go ahead and open up the inspector, and I'm going to go to the network tab. And along this row of options, I'm going to click doc. And what happens every time you load a new URL, you're loading a new document, and you're going to see it show up in this name column here in the lower left. Let me show you with one of the internal links on this page. So I'll just click on one of the product options, and you can see down below that this document loaded in. Okay, and you can see right under here it says type document. If I hover over this, it's the exact same URL that is in my browser's address bar right now. So that's what it's showing me. So when you click on something that is loaded into your browser and it's a new document, it's going to show up here on this list. And one thing you're going to notice, if I go back to the original page, I guess this works okay. And let's find that load more button. I'm going to close and reopen just to kind of erase everything. So I've got it on document. Watch when I click on load more. Nothing happens. Even though my URL actually did change up here, that's just dynamic and it's happening for me. But a new document was not loaded. Even though I've got a couple of things, showing up on that list, a new document, a new page was not loaded. Okay, so the load more button is not doing that, even though you see the URL change in your address bar. What is happening, on the other hand, let's get back to the load more button if we can find it. And let me just erase the record here. What is happening is a fetch. So when I click the load more button, Zales is going and fetching the additional product listings and putting them on the page that I'm on. Okay, so if I click fetch and I go ahead and click load more, you see all this information start showing up, and you see right here we have a fetch for the new products. So that's, I think, kind of important to understand what's happening with these load more buttons. The same thing was happening on the Shaneco side. When I click the load more button, it's doing a dynamic fetch for me as a human user who's able to click. But the great thing is that Shaneco includes a URL for Google to crawl, because Google can't click the load more button like I can and see those additional listings. It needs a URL to crawl to get to them. That's what Zales doesn't have. They've just got the load more fetch happening, and that's really just happening for people. Okay, and then our fourth example is from James Allen. Now they've got the infinite scroll thing happening, and so as I scroll down the page, I'm going to hit various breakpoints, and when I reach them, you're going to see the URL in my address bar change. So right now it's on all settings, and I'm going to scroll down, and right there as I hit that breakpoint, it says page 2, and as I scroll further, we get page 3, and so on. Okay, so that's interesting. I think that's fine, but again, this is happening just for me. If we open this up, network tab, and go to doc, as I scroll down, if it lets me, oh, it's the menu. As I scroll down, you see page 2, 3, okay, so there are things that are being loaded in, but if I hover over them, you can see that it's not the URL that I'm on. I'm not seeing all settings page 4. So it's not loading in a new document. This is dynamic, it's just happening for me. I need to see these paginated URLs in the source code. If I go to elements, and I go /page-2, I do see it in the source code. But what's really interesting, let me just erase it so you can see it better. Zoom in. Is that James Allen is going with the old school rel equals next URL. Now, around 2019, I believe Google said that they weren't paying attention to this or using this anymore. So I'm not sure if this URL is getting crawled or not. Maybe there's a study that's been done out there that confirms or denies that. But what I would like to see is this infinite scroll functionality. I think is just fine, but I think they should take Google's own guidance and pair this with the traditional pagination that we saw from Taylor and Hart. And in fact, that's exactly what I have here. This is from the Google Search Central blog. It's from John Mueller. And he talks about, how Google can't scroll or click. And so if you've got like a load more button or an infinite scroll, Google's going to have maybe trouble with that and accessing those additional listings that you're dynamically generating as a person who can do those things. So he gives an example that's really similar to the James Allen example, except for one thing. So when I scroll and hit a breakpoint, you're going to see the URL in my address bar change, which is awesome. But the extra mile that John Mueller goes is that he's got the traditional pagination down here at the bottom. So he's giving users a really cool modern experience, but he's giving Googlebot what it needs to access the subsequent pages in the series. So I hope you found that useful. We looked at 4 examples of e-commerce pagination, and I shared some thoughts on each one. And hopefully now you have a really good understanding of what's needed for a good user experience, but also to give Google access to your additional listings and the pages in your series. And I also hope you have a little bit better understanding of how these load more buttons act and serve people, but can also give Googlebot some trouble if you don't set them up right. So hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.